Welcome. My name is George Pearson and I run the How To Gurus channel here on YouTube. Most of the videos in my channel are short demonstrations of the different tools and techniques you'll find in various software programs. Right now I have several hundred of these quick videos available on YouTube. This video though is different. This is part of a new series of longer demonstrations that I'm doing to show you how to complete complex projects from start to finish using a variety of techniques and tools. All of the images I use in these projects are in the public domain, and I've included a link to the pictures in the video description in case you want to work along using the same images. Okay, let's move on to the project. In this Photoshop project, we're going to be creating this ghost effect. Now this uses a couple of standard things in here. I have some darkening that I did here on this particular image. See if we can find that image. There we go. Just did some standard adjustments to bring that background image down to that look, fairly straightforward. And we have this girl in here, just a regular picture of a girl right like that. This is a nighttime shot which adds to the ghosty feel about this, and we'll be cutting this picture out and then doing some stuff to that. As you can see up here, it kind of this ghosty effect. This is a couple things. We have the standard ghost image, which we have blocked out part of this and then did a gradient map in here for our visibility. And then we also have this background layer in here, which is a distortion of the original image. Now this technique, this is the main thing that this video is about, is this one little bit of technique right down here. It's called the dispersion effect, and it's used for creating an image that kind of breaks up into little bits. I'll do a demonstration of that first so you understand the idea and the way that it's kind of normally used, and then we'll come back and use it in a different way here for this ghosty effect. It's normally, I've seen this dispersion effect. It's kind of hard looking to me. It doesn't really look that interesting, but it is a real interesting way of doing this kind of a thing out here. So you can take what is considered kind of a trick shot and use it for different effects. That's what we'll be working with. So we have our background image here, our background of our person, and we have the forest picture here, and we'll combine those together. So let's first take a look at and see what I'm talking about by this dispersion effect. Now the basic thing is fairly straightforward. We're going to be cutting out our foreground image, and I'll do that here on this glass. We'll just be using this as a demo on how this technique works. Zoom in a little bit here. I'm just going to do just a quick cutout on this. I'm not going to spend any real time on this particular image to do real clean, so this is just to show you what the effect is all about. But it'll give you a good sense of what's happening with this. So it requires first cutting out your foreground image and then placing that foreground image on a background. We'll be using two of these images, actually copy this layer and make a second image out of that, and then we'll be blending the two together to give us that dispersion effect. And of course, this is going to be the girl once we get down to the actual video. So there it is. Let's make a new layer from that. Layer, new, via copy. Just like that. That's good. That's our foreground image. Make a copy of this one. I'm just going to drag it down to our new layer button. Make a copy there. Background I have hidden. So let's put a new background in here. I'll just put in white. Let's just fill it with white. There we go. Grab our paint bucket and fill it with white. Okay, there we are. So that's the first step. We can now move the first glass over a little bit. I'll do the dispersion effect on the left-hand side here. So we have our foreground glass and our background glass. Now we're going to be taking this background glass and actually distorting the shape of the background glass and spreading that out. Lots of tools that you can do that with. I could use the smudge tool right here. We could go up here and use the liquefy filter to kind of shove the image over. That works. All these will give you slightly different effects. We can use the puppet warp tool to smear that over. We'll be looking at that. Or you can just stretch it if you want to. I'll just do just the stretch right now so you can get an idea of what happens here. So let's go to Edit, Transform Scale. I'm just going to stretch that off to the side and apply that. So we stretch the background image. I'm now going to soft focus this just a little bit. So Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, get a little bit of a soft focus on there. Maybe not quite that much. I want just a bit. There we go. Okay, so foreground image, background image has been stretched or distorted or whatever. A little more distortion doesn't hurt when you do this. We now need layer masks on both of these two layers. So click on one, click on the layer mask button. On the second one, layer mask button as well. So those both have layer masks. Now the way layer masks work, if it is in white, it shows everything. If it's black, it hides everything. So what we want to do is we want to hide the background image and then show parts of that by putting white back into it. Let me show you how this works. I'll change this over to black, and let's just click on this layer mask, fill that with black. Notice how that now hides that background glass. We can then show that background glass by painting white onto this layer mask. So if I grab my paintbrush, and let's bring the size down a bit here. Let me find a good size for that. That's pretty good. So bring the size down a little bit. And if I switch this over to white and paint on the mask, notice our outline right there. So we're painting on the mask. If I then click in here, like this, you'll see that I begin to see that background coming through. And it only comes through where I am seeing those dots. So that will give us part of our dispersion effect in here. We actually are painting in or making visible that part. So we can do this to spread this out. We can even do a couple more layers and spread it out further if you want to, or once you're finished you can distort that. You know, lots of options in there, but that's the basic concept. We then want to break up the left-hand side of this glass and then get an overlap between these. So the background we are showing, the left side here, we're going to be hiding this left side. Same thing, except in this case we want to show everything and then hide some stuff. So we're working on white, and we're going to invert that to black and paint black onto the layer mask. Again, click on your layer mask, make sure you see that outline in there so you're on the layer mask. And then if I click in here, I am then showing, or hiding rather, I'm hiding the image in behind because of that layer mask. And we can then blend the two images together this way so we can see, you know, show or hide the different parts with that layer mask. Now, you don't have to use layer masks. I could just use an eraser tool in here, for instance, and just erase this, and then show us from the background through by erasing this. Take a look at that technique. So there are different ways of approaching this. Click on the layer mask, click on your trash can, you can delete layer masks. You can add them in or delete them. You can go either way on this. Let's now look at this with the eraser tool. Same thing, in this case I'm going onto the actual image itself and then erasing it. Now I need to have a soft brush for this. Let me just come down here to soft. There we go. And I'll just kind of erase the image out, showing through the background image. Now we're not seeing anything right now in here because we're not showing that part of that image because that is hidden by the black. So I'll come back in and I will bring back in some of this. Again, paint in some white on this. Make sure we're on our paintbrush. There we go. Paint back in white, and we can show some of that background. So by using, you know, these different techniques, showing and hiding, what we get is the effect of the image beginning to break apart and splattering out here. Now, of course, for a real nice look, you want to take a lot of time on this, do a real clean job, do some fun paintbrush tricks I'll be showing you how to do, how to adjust your paintbrush. So, there's a lot more to it than just this, but this is the basics, the basic concept. We distort the image in behind and then show that image through, and then on the top image either erase it away or using a layer mask hide the image. They both work, both techniques, and that gives us this effect where the image kind of blends in and begins to break apart or disperse on the left hand side. So that's the concept. Let me just get rid of this, we don't need to save that. Let's now see how we can do that in here to create this ghost-like image and use that dispersion effect for all of this stuff out here. We're going to be doing just some standard stuff in here, but then the dispersion effect for where we get the transparencies and showing it's kind of blending and smearing out there. Alright, let's start off with just the background image in here. And I'll pull the foreground image, and let me just pull this down like that. I'll grab her image and just drag her over here. I no longer need that, I can get rid of that one. We now need to resize this image. So let's just go up to Edit, Transform Scale, and I'll find a good size. Because it should be pretty big on the picture. Kind of like that. So that's about where we want to be. She kind of fills the area over here on the right hand side. We're going to be doing a selection and getting rid of all of this outside stuff. We're not going to be keeping any of that. Just apply, and there we go. Let's just make this picture just a little bit bigger here. Let's go ahead and fit on screen. There we go. Okay, if you want to really carefully see where she's going to be sitting, you can adjust the opacity on that and get an idea of where she's going to be placed in here. That looks pretty good. We can always adjust a little bit later on if we want to, but I think this is a good start. Okay, so those are the two elements. Let's now clean out the background around our figure. We're going to make a selection on the figure and delete all that background stuff. So I'm going to zoom in for this. You can use any tool that you want for your selection. I'm just going to use the polygonal lasso tool right there. It's my personal favorite for this kind of work. Now, before we do this, you may want to copy this layer, or when you make your selection, make a new layer from your selection. That's the way I'm going to be going. That way we can preserve this as a saved piece in case you want to go back. And I'll just start up here, and then using the polygonal lasso tool, I'll click around the image. I don't have to be absolutely perfect with this technique. We're going to be coming in and doing some other stuff, so it doesn't need to be a perfect selection, but better is always better than worse. So take your time. With the polygonal lasso tool, I find the point I want to be at, position my cursor, and click. It then sets that point, and I can then move the line down to my next point. Now you can see in this image here there is some breaking up in there. That's just kind of standard JPEG stuff. This, by the way, is a public domain image that I found online. So is that background. They're both from online. So I have included the link for this in the materials description. And if you want, you can then download the image from the same place that I downloaded this from, and you can then copy along and do the exact same thing that I'm doing on this image. Notice how if I scroll just over the rulers here, just off the picture, it actually scrolls the picture for me automatically, so I don't have to be doing anything with any keyboard shortcuts or anything for that scroll. Just move to the edge, and it will then move the picture automatically. Don't go too far, just go just into the edge, or it's going to scroll too quickly. Also, if you're using the polygonal lasso tool, don't click too fast. If you click too fast, it's going to collapse the selection, and we don't want that. Now down here I have this lamp in the way, so I'm going to just make up some shape in there, just a little bit of a ragged edge to get around that lamp. Keep in mind that left side is going to go away. We're going to be blending that out into that ghost effect, so it's not that critical, but I like having a little bit of a randomness in there. And the bottom's going to be faded clear away. We're going to make that transparent. So again, not that critical down here, but I'll just do a good job anyway because that's kind of what I do. And just clicking around slowly here to complete the selection now. A little hard here because it's in the dark shadow, but if I come up a bit I can see there's the dress over there. So I'll just kind of move around in here someplace. Again, we're going to make all this bottom part disappear or fade out. So it's not that critical along the bottom section. It's more critical on the top half of this picture where we're up into the girl from the waist up. That's what we're going to keep fairly clean. So that's where we need to spend a little more attention when we're making our selections so that we don't get things messed up. Okay, we're almost back up here to the top again. There's her hand. I kind of like this picture. It almost looks like she's a ghost already, which adds a lot to the ease of doing this particular effect. If I had just a real bright image, it would be more difficult to do, so I had to go in and make some changes to the image to give it that kind of spooky feel, but this already has that, so again, that's a big plus. Okay, just about finished. There it is. That gives us our selection on the girl. We can now just zoom out a little bit. Now I'm doing a lot of stuff here with menus that you'll see. I'll be choosing menus, I'll be picking tools instead of using keyboard shortcuts, and I'm doing that on purpose so that it's easy for you to see exactly the steps that I'm going through. A lot of people will be doing keyboard shortcuts, mentioning the keyboard shortcuts, so you're not really seeing what they're doing. So I'll try as much as possible to do things right on the screen, things that are actually visible, and stay away from all that keyboard shortcut stuff. Now, keyboard shortcuts are great tools to learn and memorize. It can really speed up the process when you're editing in Photoshop. But for now, because I want you to see what I'm doing, I'll stay away from those. Okay, so let's go to a layer, new, layer via copy right there. And there says our keyboard shortcut. I could have just clicked on Control-J and it would have done this all in one shot, but then you wouldn't have seen this nicely typed out layer via copy for us. There we go. Okay, this background layer, we can now hide that. We no longer need that layer. That's not important. There's our foreground image. We need a background copy of her like we did with the glass. So let's take her and drag her down to our new layer button right there. I'm just going to name these quickly here. Foreground and background. I'll just call it back so we don't confuse with our background layer back there. And put that underneath. There we are. Let's zoom out a bit here. Again, there's a keyboard shortcut for that to zoom out, but I'll use the menu so you can see what it is that I'm doing. Now I want the image to come out about this far, and any technique is okay. If the image becomes kind of blurry as you're moving up there, that's fine. A blurred image is okay. That's why you can use the smudge, or you can use the liquify filter. Those are all fine. Let's see how this is done using the puppet warp, which is just kind of a neat tool. There we go. What it does is it gives you all these points, and you can then grab points and move the image out based upon those points. Now you do this by clicking on points in here, and these give you control handles. You can then move any one of those control handles and all the rest of the handles will stay put. So for this effect we want to have a couple of things going. We want to have control handles along the left hand side here. That's about as far as I want to take that. We want control handles along the right hand side. This is going to lock this side into position. And once I get some of these on here, I'll show you exactly how this works. Don't worry about being exact on these things. It's going to click to the closest control handle. You know, the closest intersecting point. Okay, now what you do is you grab one of your control handles and you can then pull that out and actually smear the image. You can see it right there. If you hold the Shift key down, you can grab more than one control handle. So I'm going to grab those. Now when I pull, it pulls that whole thing. Notice how the image actually is distorting now in the background. You see your head's kind of getting distorted up there. That's okay. I'm going to blur that out and not worry about that. We'll just erase that head since we're not going to be using the head. So I'll pull it out a bit like this. I can then come in here and pull some more of these and give me some more distortion happening. Just like that. And we're going to be cutting all this stuff out and really smearing it out as we go. That's about how far I want that side to move out. Let's apply that. So there's that distortion moving out. Now I don't need it up here on the head, so I'm going to take the eraser tool and just erase out that top section. Right about at the shoulder level right there. Well, let's just take out that top bit. So grab the eraser, and we just don't need that in the way. Everything else looks okay. As you can see, the right hand side is staying put. That's what I want. So there we go. There is our smear. This is going to become our ghosty image in behind. We're going to be showing this and hiding some of this using our layers as we talked about. Go over to our foreground layer, add a layer mask. Background layer, add a layer mask. The background layer needs to be in black, so let's switch our colors over here to black. Paint bucket, and then make sure that you're on the mask, that it has that outline around it. Click in there and that covers that mask. Notice how this is now hidden. We no longer see that, so that's fine. So far so good. Now we need to grab a brush and begin re-showing this image. We're going to do one final step. Once I have that re-shown, we're going to copy it and do a Gaussian blur to soften it out even further. Let's go ahead and do this by working with a new brush and painting a brush in here. Now we want to have this on white. There we go, white and brush. And this time we're going to be looking at some special effects brushes. If you bring your brushes down and you scroll down here, you see we have some other brushes that are hiding underneath. All kinds of different things that are available in here. Real strange things. There's a rubber duck, for instance, very, very odd. But all kinds of things that are rather random, different kinds of brushes. And we can use these things for our special effects work. But we're going to take it one step further. We're not going to be using it just like this. We're going to actually come in and modify that as well. So let's just grab this one. I'll grab this one. This is the Chalk Dark. If you don't see that, go up here to your little gear and come down here and you can look at your dry media brushes. You should be able to find that Chalk Dark right in there. But any brush that has a nice randomness to it, so I'll use that brush. And it's pretty small, as you can see there. Let's bring that size up. I want a pretty good size on this brush. It's a big picture, so it's going to take a big brush. There we go, a little less than that. So something about that size. You can see that right there. Okay, so that's the basic brush. Now, if I came in here and painted white, you can see how that begins to show the image through there, through that mask. But if I just did this, we'd have this shape just repeated all over the place, and it would begin to look very, very congested, very, very repetitive, and I don't want that. I want to have some randomness on this brush. So to do that, we're going to go up to our brush options. Going up here to the window menu, come down to brush right there, and this brings up this really interesting panel that allows you to control your brush with all kinds of different things going on here. We can change the angle of the brush in here. We can change the size of the brush. We can flip the brush. This is how it would look if we just kind of, painted that So I can adjust my angle in here on that brush. You can see how the angle changes. But the more fun stuff is up here. Shape Dynamics is going to change the shape of the brush as we're painting with it. Click on a Shape Dynamics, and we can add a size jitter. Now notice as I pull that up, how the size becomes more random down here. So that's what I want. I want to have a size jitter. We can control the minimum maximum diameter right in there. We can do an angle jitter, which rotates the image around a little bit. So each time I hit the brush is going to rotate it to a different direction. And we can do a roundness jitter as well. So all of this stuff is going to come in and give us variability on that brush. And then we can do a scattering, which just scatters the brush around. Same thing here on scattering. You click on that, and you can come in and adjust the amount of scatter. That's just going to make it, again, more random for us. You can increase the count on your scatter, the amount down here. We'll leave those at the bottom settings. So there we go. We now have a brush that's going to be painting in a random manner for us, and that's going to make it look a little bit nicer. So again, that's the brush, window, brush, Shape Dynamics. I put size jitter clear to the top, a little bit on minimum, a little bit on angle jitter, a little bit on roundness, and then on scattering, a little bit on scattering on this one, and then leave those settings as they are. Okay, now notice as I'm clicking in here, the brush size changes every time I click, and the angle changes. So I'm not getting the same thing every time. I'm not getting just a repeating pattern. And I'm just going to paint in a bit in here. And just get some randomness on this. This will show a lot more once we come in and darken that background down. We'll probably do that in just a second. But the important bit here is I can come in here, paint this, and it's going to be giving me these random shapes. Okay, so that's pretty good as I start here. We now need to break up the left-hand side of this image, but I need to have information behind there. So I'm just going to take this now and just paint in here a bit. Give me a little bit outside, that's fine. That just gives me some stuff to see through when we begin to break this side up. Okay, that looks good. Let's now go up here, do the exact same thing but opposite colors. So we're painting with black instead of white. And again, I'm just going to come along that edge and just tap. Each time I tap, notice how it gives me a different brush. It spins it, different size. So I have that randomness happening. And that kind of breaks things up for us. Okay, there we go. We now have, using the dispersion content idea, we have broken up the image, moving out into the background here. So far, so good. Now we want to hide the bottom part of this image, actually kind of fade that image out into the background. But first, let's come in and adjust our background. I'm going to make a copy of this and leave our original there. Let's now adjust this. We're going to be darkening this down. And we'll go up to Image, Adjustments. And there are ways of doing this. We can use exposure, levels, vibrance, lots of things on this. We'll just start off with some levels in here. Here's our levels. If I move the left side up, this takes anything which is black and moves it into the gray area. So it actually darkens down the image. That way I can adjust my midtones in here. I can bring the lights back up again if I want to, but in this case I don't. I want to keep it kind of on the darker side. Notice how this also tends to increase our contrast a bit as well. And we'll just take this as just kind of dark and moody like that. That's pretty good. Choose OK. we're getting there. So there's the original, there's the image just brought down with the levels control. Again, pulling the blacks up is mostly what I did. Now we want to have the image visible up here but fading out down here. So going back up here, we know that if we are in white it's visible, if we are in black it's hidden up here. So we're going to use that knowledge and put in a gradient in here, a circular gradient. White in the middle and going to black on the outside. So we want a white to black circular gradient. So here's our white, there's our black. Grab our gradient tool. Let's set this to circular gradient right there. White to black. If I click right on in the face and pull this out, and actually, let me just undo that. Well, that was the idea. I just had it on the wrong layer. You want to be on your layer mask right there. Okay, on the layer mask, pull it out a bit, and we're actually backwards on this thing. So let's go ahead and undo that gradient in there. Let's make sure we have white first. There we go, white to black. So I want white to black. Again, face, come out a little ways, just like that. Now maybe a little too small, so I'm going to extend that further. There we go. So that gives us our gradient in there. So we have full visibility here, and she's just fading out towards the bottom based upon that gradient. Now I lost a little bit of that edge in here, so let's paint some of our edge back in again. Again, we're using black to hide this. Let's go back to our black tool, back to our paintbrush, and just a little bit of that in here to make sure that that edge stays hidden. You can see it happening right in there. Okay, it's looking pretty good. I think we're getting someplace now. Now we want to soften this background up. That's this image here. So I'm going to be using a Gaussian blur on this to blur the image out. We even can blur out the mask if you want to. So filter and blur. Gaussian blur is right there. And you can see here I'm on the mask layer. And as I move that, I'm actually blurring the mask out. And blurring the mask out has the effect of blurring out the image. It kind of becomes very, very wispy. There we go. And that's looking pretty good too. Now we're a little bit too bright at the bottom down here. So I'm going to do something else just to kind of knock that back. Again, to hide, we want to have black. So I'm going to back up to our brush. I'm going to change the brush here this time. Let's just grab a nice soft brush, zero hardness, and on the layer mask we're on black, and I'm just going to come in, just kind of tap in a little bit there and take out some of those light spots. Okay, just about there. The last thing you want to do on this ghosty appearance is maybe bring down the transparency of our top layer here. So she's just a little bit see-through. Kind of like that. Do the same thing down here. It's an 83%. I'll do the same thing down here. Let's bring that back a little bit more so that she fades out even more over the background. And there we go. There is creating a ghost that's kind of fading in and appearing in the image. As you can see, you can do a lot of tweaking to get this just exactly where you want. And there's a lot of flexibility in this technique. But the real trick to this ghost appearance, this ghost technique, is to use this dispersion concept down here. These two layers right there, where we're using the duplicated layer, stretching or distorting that layer out to give us our smear effect. You can even, again, you can smear that if you want to, whatever you want to do on that one. And then using our layer masks to control the visibility of that, and then that one trick using the special controls for the brush, so we have that randomness on the brush, so this doesn't look too random, too contrived. So there we are. That is how to create a ghost picture. There are lots of variations on this technique, and I've been asked a few questions about this in the past. Again, the real trick on this is to use those two layers and those layer masks to control what's being shown, and then by using the two layer masks in here, one painting in black, one painting in white, you can get that overlap of that effect. Now, most of the times that I've seen this technique used, they keep it real obvious, and it looks like the image is breaking up into pixels and kind of spreading across, being real pixelated. And that's okay if that's kind of what you're looking for. That's fine. But I thought it's an ideal one for this kind of an effect here. You can also use this same trick for other kinds of effects. You can actually use this trick here with a photograph of flame, for instance, and use this to give you more control and more randomness in the flame picture to make it a different kind of flame picture. Or you can use this effect to create a misty or smoky effect. You can see right here we're getting a real misty, smoky kind of thing happening in here. It's a great way to create some of those specialty effects that are very difficult to control or to paint otherwise. Now, for the smoky effect, you want to do more of that Gaussian blur. That really comes in there and gives you that blurred out effect, which you want for the smoky quality. So there are lots of different approaches to this. The more random your brush, that's why I used a chalk brush, and then we randomized that chalk brush, the more natural it looks. The more controlled your brush is, the more artificial it looks. But sometimes that artificial look is also very nice. It's more of a cartoony effect, a cartoony look. So if you want something bright, cheerful, cartoony, or just more of a cartoonish effect, try going for a more standardized brush with not as much size variation, not as much shape variation on that, and you get more of a cartoony effect. Keep your edges harder. Don't go for the Gaussian blur. Keep things that stiff as possible. So you can take this basic technique here and really go all over the place with it. There are lots and lots of possibilities with this technique to create lots of different kinds of looks. This is just one idea that I had when I was looking at this and looking through for things to do. And I had this idea of doing a ghost with the dispersion effect. But lots of other ways you can use this if you want to. You can use it to make something look like it's exploding or blowing up or flying apart. Maybe a planet blowing apart. You can use this technique for that kind of a thing as well. So there we go. And again, that is this dispersion effect, in this case used for a ghost. If you want to at this point, you can take this a bit further as well. We just kind of left it off where you can really see the effect. But one more thing, as I brought the bottom side down, you want to bring the right side down as well. We can do that using another technique. Now this time I'm going to go over here, click on the image side of this, make sure you have that outline showing. And this is grab our burn tool. And let's adjust the burn tool, grab a standard brush. Hardness kind of soft, I'll bring the size up a bit. There we go. And I'm just going to use this tool to darken down the side here on the right hand side by giving it more exposure. And that's what the burn tool does. So the image is still there, it's just darkened down a bit, and that helps you blend it into the shadows in the background. You can even use that to change the effect in here a little bit if you want to. So there we go. Last little finishing touch to help blend the image in. You may want to soften up that other side. There's again a lot of little tweaks you can do in here to take this a little bit further, make it even more dramatic. But there it is. That is the ghost effect using the dispersion effect. Thank you for watching this special Photoshop photography project video. Don't forget to subscribe so that you will get first notice of new project videos in the future. Just click on this link right here where it says subscribe here. You can get all 12 project videos in this series along with 26 special videos demonstrating the tools and techniques that I used in these projects by clicking on this link right down here. And then thank you again for watching this training video.